morning, everybody. Thank you, Megan, for sharing. We want to welcome you and welcome everybody who's joining us online. And if you are wanting to jump online today, you can do so, and we encourage that. We encourage you to tweet out. We think it's a great way for you to let people know what you're enjoying, what you're doing, what your church is doing. The password of the day to get online is healthy conflict. And again, we can't thank you enough for all the ways that you guys are posting on Facebook and Twitter. And we just think that's one of the fastest ways to share what God is doing. Also, if you're interested tonight, if you're in the 6th grade or above, or you've got a child who is, don't forget the youth group starts tonight at 5:30 in this room. And they're really doing some neat stuff this year with some youth group, but they're going to get together for a big hurrah tonight in this room. And then they break up into small groups for the next couple weeks, and so we're really excited about that. Today we're in the middle of our series on handling conflict, and on overcomers. And today we're talking about handling conflict with the idea of this, is that if you want to overcome life, if you want to do good at life, one of the things that you've got to eventually get skilled at, and one of the things you eventually got to learn is, how do I handle conflict? How do I get to a point where I'm in relationship and something drastic or terrible happened, or something that offended me happened, but we're going to overcome this situation because I have the skills to do that. I've been empowered to do that. I have the knowledge to do that. And so if you want to be an overcomer in life, you have to learn to do relationships well. And if you're going to learn to do relationships well and have them last, eventually you're going to have conflict. And so you've got to learn to overcome conflict. And so we're talking today about, what does it mean to overcome conflict? Not just overcome conflict, but overcome conflict God's way. Overcome conflict God's way. Now this is huge because while I know that this probably doesn't apply to anybody here, because none of you have any conflict, you probably know somebody and have a friend who's had conflict in a relationship. Raise your hand if you know someone who's had conflict in a relationship somewhere along the way. Okay, good. All right, a few of you, excellent. The rest of you don't have any friends. That's all right. Stay here, we'll make friends, and we'll move forward, all right? And maybe some of you, okay, not only do you have a friend who's had conflict, but maybe some of you have seen it handled inappropriately. Anybody seen it handled inappropriately? Because, again, none of us would do that, but we know somebody who's handled it inappropriately, right? Like you suddenly saw a message that was to you, but not really to you. It was kind of for the entire world to see on Facebook. And you read something like, "You didn't show up at my house last night. I assume you don't like me anymore." And the entire world went, "I wonder what's going on in that person's life that they felt the need to post that on Facebook." Maybe you had a tweet that said something like this. It said, "My boss is a jerk. I hate her." Because that's the appropriate place to put that, right? When we handle conflict, that's the way to handle it, right? Or, "My husband is the dumbest," fill in the blank. Right? Right? Again, what we see is that one of the things that social media has done, and although we love it and we encourage you to tweet here, one of the things it's done is it's allowed us to say things in a public forum that we would never say to an individual. In fact, we have more trouble with what goes online anymore in our relationships than what actually happens face to face in our relationships. And so we're going to spend some time talking about, hey, you know what? One of the dangers is that when we handle conflict is that we don't do it appropriately the way Jesus says. We rather go to jump into Facebook or Twitter land, and then we can tweet stuff that we would never have the courage to say face to face. Somebody say amen there. All right, so how does Jesus tell us to handle conflict? How do we become overcomers? We're going to jump right into it. Ready? It's in the Gospel of Matthew. If you have an e-device, you want to jump in with us, we're just going to cover one verse today. It's Matthew 18, verse 15. Matthew 18, verse 15. It says this. If Jesus is speaking, he says, "If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over." If they listen to you, you have won them over. Now, Jesus is really brilliant here. He's really smart. I wanted to just check out a few things that Jesus did that you may not have even seen. Because when I was reading this, I went, yeah, Jesus, because everybody else is wrong, and when I'm right, and that's the way I live, because everybody else is always wrong and I'm right, right? That's the way you work out too, right? I mean, no one goes around saying, I am wrong a lot, and I just like it that way. You know, I like to be wrong. It feels good to be wrong. No. And so Jesus says, look, when you're right and somebody else is wrong. And so he immediately starts out and we all go, yeah, because I'm right. I'm the right person. And then he says, go. What I want to do is I just want to highlight a few key words that Jesus uses here. that I look and I go, I don't know if Jesus was specifically speaking to our current culture with Twitter and Facebook and how we handle conflict and do relationships, but he definitely is. Like, I don't know if he thought one day there's going to be Facebook. He's God, so he knew that was coming, but I don't know if he said this thinking, look, you guys don't have this yet, but one day your kids are going to love this, like Back to the Future moment, right? All right? And so he says, go. He says, go back one slide, guys, sorry. He says, go and point out their faults just between you and their team, right? No, that's not what he says at all. But that's the way most of us act, right? We go and we either have a team or they have a team, right? We go and we say, hey, come together. I want to tell you what's going on in my life, and I want to tell you what this problem I have. And we get this team rallied around us, and then the whole team goes over and we handle conflict this way. You ever see that at school? Students? Teenagers? Right? You rally up your club, your group of friends, and maybe there was the group of friends and that person was one of them, or you were one of them, and now the whole group of friends is attacking you. Sometimes we do this at church. We say, we had a meeting, and then the real meeting took place in the... Yeah, a few of you knew the answer to that one, the parking lot, right? Like afterwards, we decided to rally up the troops and rally up everybody and say, now we're really going to get them. Because we didn't like the way the meeting turned out. Now we're just going to rally everybody up. And we've seen churches fall apart because the people don't know how to handle conflict and don't know how to deal with conflict. And we've seen relationships fall apart, right? Where somebody is in a marriage or someone's dating someone or engaged even, and there's a bit of conflict. And rather than going and discussing that one-on-one, we rally up an entire family. And now the whole family hates Joe. It's terrible. And now the daughter finally works it out with Joe, and she gets back with Joe, but the whole family still hates Joe. Why? Because the daughter didn't really handle the conflict well to begin with. So Jesus says, go, not post it on Facebook. Jesus says, go, not post it on Facebook. I'm going to say that one more time because this is a real tough one, right? And I got to be honest with you. It is so tempting, isn't it? I'm angry. This is how I feel. Now I feel better. Now the whole world knows I'm really ticked. We haven't really handled it the way Jesus wants us to. Jesus says, go, point out their fault, just between the two of you. And then he says, and if they listen to you, you have won them over. If they listen to you, you have won them over. Now, here's what's really interesting, again, because Jesus is talking to those of us who are always right, Jesus is saying, look, you're always right, and when somebody else messes up, you go and you talk to them one-on-one, and then if they listen to you, it's really good. Now, what's really smart is that Jesus says, and if you're really listening to me right now, you're going to see that there will be occasion. Once, right? Back in 1998, you were wrong, right? I mean, it was that long ago, right? In 98, that was the last time you were wrong. You got it on the calendar, right? And then there it is on the fridge, the last time you were wrong. Jesus says, on that occasion when you're wrong, make sure you're listening. On that rare occasion, make sure. So if you're listening to me right now, on that rare occasion when you're wrong, just turn what I say around and make sure that you're listening. Go to the next slide. So he's really just kind of giving us 3 steps. Go. Conflict must be handled in person. Well, between how many, Jesus? Well, between you and the person involved, not their team. All right? And then when you go, make sure that not only are they listening, but if you're going to go talk to them, make sure that you're listening. We were looking through this, my wife and I was like, she goes, you could stop right there. If we just did that, we'd have it solved. And I said, I know. And then I got up for church this morning. I'm walking out the door, and I realized I already screwed it up today. I already messed up how the very rules Jesus has given us on how to handle conflict. I messed it up this morning. I got mad at her, and I didn't communicate it well. And I'm thinking, man, this is really tough stuff. I'm glad you taught us how to do it, Jesus, because if you didn't have these rules, boy, it would be even more difficult. It would be even more difficult. So let's put into practice some of what Jesus says and how we're going to live it out. All right? And what I've done is we put on your chair a little, just kind of a pledge card that you could fill out if you're really brave and you say, you know what, I really do want to follow Jesus. So we put a little pledge card on your chair that basically says, I'm going to handle conflict kind of the way we're talking about it today, the way Jesus says to handle it. Now, before we go there, why is this important to Jesus? Think about this. There are thousands of things that Jesus said that aren't recorded. In fact, the Gospel of John says if everything Jesus said were written down, it would fill up all the books in the entire world. So why is this important to Jesus? Why is how we handle conflict important to Jesus? Because you're important to Jesus. Did you know that? You're important to Jesus. In fact, Jesus is excited about you. And we joke, but it's a true metaphor that Jesus has your picture on his desk, right? When you look at Jesus' desk and you go, hey, there's my picture on your desk, Jesus. That's really cool. Thanks, right? And so you're important to Jesus. And you know what? The person you're sitting beside right now is too. Yeah. And so the way you two do relationships, whether you're married, whether you know that person or not, whoever you're sitting beside right now, the way you two do relationships matters to Jesus. Because Jesus doesn't like to look at his desk and go, you know, these two people, I got these pictures, they can't figure out how to get together. But Jesus says, look, relationships are extremely important. In fact, that's how we end up in heaven. We end up in heaven doing relationships. And so he says, look, let's get a jump start on it and begin to do it well now. Because relationships are in heaven. The other piece, and the reason that Matthew records it, is because Matthew gets the mission of the church. Now, here's your test. You ready? If you're a guest this morning, you get a free pass. If you get this right, you get 2 points this morning. You ready? You ready? The mission of the church is to move people closer to Jesus. Did you get it right? Did you know that one? We'll say it together again. You ready? The mission of the church is to move people closer to Jesus. And so the reason this is important to Jesus and the reason Matthew says, look, we need to have this is because Matthew looks and says, I bet there'll be a day when people don't get together. And they have conflict, and they can't figure out how to handle it. And so we should record what Jesus says right here because when people look at the church, if the church is screwing up how they handle conflict, people aren't going to go, yeah, there's a place that loves Jesus. I want to go be with them. If the world looks and goes, there's a place that's just cutting each other up with knives and words, and it's just a terrible place to be, Matthew's going, look, I know they aren't going to go, hey, let's go be part of the church. They look like they're in love with each other. And we jokingly say that we're a church for those who are recovering from church because many of us have been at churches where it's like, my gosh, do you guys even care about each other? And some of us have family units that we've come out of where you really want to just kind of step back in time and say, pause, time out. Do you realize what we're doing to each other because we're not handling conflict well? And do you realize that in another 10 years that none of us as brothers and sisters are ever going to speak to each other again? We're never going to do a family reunion. We're never going to get together because of how we're handling conflict. And so this is huge, and it's important to Jesus. And so he leaves us this lesson on the mission of the church, saying, look, the mission of the church should be to handle conflict well, and you should be able to handle conflict well. And if you're going to follow me, let's talk about how to do conflict well. You ready? First thing we need to do is take ownership of the conflict. Take ownership of the conflict. Another way to say that is when you deny your responsibility in every conflict situation, you're in effect saying, the problem's never me, it's always, amen, right? Right? I mean, it's never me, it's always you, whoever the you is, right? Because again, I'm never wrong, it's just always you until I'm actually wrong. But what if we said, you know what, in every conflict moment, I have a part to play in that. Because I'm not perfect, and I might have misspoken. I might have said something wrong. I might have not heard something well. You know what, I might have not been there on time. I might not have listened well. And so maybe I have a part to play in this moment of conflict that we're doing. And so I need to take ownership and say, hey, we got trouble in this relationship, whether it's with a friend, whether it's with a coworker, whether it's a sports team, whether it's with your spouse, right? And say, hey, you know what? I've got some conflict here, and I need to take ownership, and I need to stay engaged because I have a part to play in that. All right, Jesus' rules are, what do we do when there's conflict? We tweet it, right? What's he say? You go and talk to the person face to face, one-on-one first. Face to face and one-on-one first. Let me say it again. Face to face and one-on-one first. Now this is courageous when you do this. This is like Superman moment, right? I have a problem with you. I'm nervous about the problem. I'm going to come talk to you. But here's the challenge. We all like triangles. Again, we all like to get our team. We all like to say, hey, you come over here. Let me tell you the story. And some of you are going to be able to see the difference of this real quick. You ready? This is how this works inappropriately. Hey, I got a problem with Joey, and I want to talk to you about it. And so here's what's going on. And then you start talking about it, and what a terrible person he is, and he's evil, and God's going to smite him. He's going to smite him good, and he's just such a wonderful, horrible, no good liar, and you go on, right? And then by the time you're done, you haven't really done anything other than add someone into the triangle. Now, there is a healthy way to do that. And so I just want to be clear, because as we were kind of walking through this, I thought, well, what if someone goes, you know what, every once in a while I have a conflict moment where I need to bounce my ideas off of someone. And if you're like me, you probably have that too, where you like, you know what, there's sensitive situations and I need to go to a friend and say, hey, listen to this. See if this sounds right. See if I'm saying this correctly. And there is a difference here. There is a difference between I'm here working for a resolution. I'm working to say this in a way that cares for the person versus I'm here to convince you that they're evil and you're on my team. Right? Now we need to pause right here a second, because there are people in the room who hate conflict, who avoid conflict like crazy. Do you know anybody like that? You know anybody who avoids conflict? That just, you know what, it doesn't matter. They're just going to keep it inside. And here's what's important to know about conflict when you keep it inside, is that it builds up pressure. Okay, and you may know someone like this. In fact, you know someone, and we call them a pressure cooker, right? And when they finally blow up and they finally let it out, you're in trouble for stuff you did for the past 10 years, right? You know anybody like that? They got like a grocery list of things you did wrong, and you're thinking to yourself, holy cow, how long have you been keeping track of everything I did wrong? And all they've been doing their entire life is just building up pressure and building up more and more pressure. And you know what happens when you build up enough pressure, right? When you finally let it off, it doesn't come out all nice and easy, and everybody goes, wow, that person really loves me. What happens? It blows up. You ready? Some of you have seen this. You're like, hey, I know that cap can hit the back wall after all you just did, right? Right? But and then again, this is why Jesus says this is so important, because Jesus says, look, if we don't handle pressure or conflict well, we're just building up pressure in relationships, and our relationships are going to die if we don't learn how to say, I need to confront you. And then we're just building up pressure as a community, because now we got a bunch of people that are just ready to pop and blow up on each other and spill yuckiness all over each other. And Jesus says, look, if we're going to be a healthy church, we're going to be in healthy relationships, we're going to learn to do life well, we've got to learn to handle pressure well, because nobody wants to open this anymore, do you? And this is how most of us live our daily lives. We say, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to deal with it. I'm not going to go confront that person. Because why? Because we're afraid of what's going to happen, when if we really understood conflict, we'd be afraid after this happens. Not when the first incident happens. You should feel this, dude. It's like ready to explode in my hand. All right? So here's just a couple thoughts. You ready? First, attack your disagreement, not each other. Now, some of you who are old enough remember the show Married with Children. All right? And we joke about this sometimes when we do our marriage coaching, but I've learned I can't reference it anymore with the young kids coming in to get married, and I always feel really old. But you remember Al Bundy and Peg? Right? And this show was like the anti of how to do relationships, okay? And here's what would happen, is that they would never attack the issue. They would attack each other. They would never attack the issue. They would attack each other. And so I wasn't really allowed to watch it as a kid, but we used this on one of our marriage gatherings one time, because I was looking for this clip, and I remember how the show was so terrible at relationships. And here's what happens. Al Bundy walks in the door, and Peg immediately begins to tell him what a terrible person he is. Al, you're the worst person. You are stupid. You're the ugliest person. And she goes on for like 30 seconds, this litany. And again, you kind of, if you watch the show or ever have seen it, you know, Al's just kind of standing there kind of, and Peg's just laying into him. And he finally says, dear, I understand you're mad at me. Will you tell me why you're mad at me? And it would be really funny if the rest of us didn't somehow relate, because we've had a moment where, whether it's in a marriage or just some other relationship with a friend, where instead of saying, hey, I'm really upset with you, let me tell you why, and this is why I feel this way, somebody launched into us with an attack telling us why we are this evil, terrible person and we're going to hell and we're the dumbest so-and-so in the entire world. And there was probably some moments in there where on TV they would have beep, 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 right? Because you can't say those words, right? And that person launched into us, and by the end of it, you just kind of wanted to say, I get that I am obviously the lowest person in the world, but can you tell me what's going on? You see, often when we're hurt, rather than saying to the person, hey, I really hurt right now. What you did this morning, what you did this evening, what you did about 5 minutes ago, it really hurt me. I just want you to know I'm hurt, and this is why. We often say, I'm hurt, and before I even tell you why I'm hurt, I'm going to hurt you. That way we both start out injured, and now we feel terrible together. And again, it doesn't sound of any intelligence right here. You know, we all scratch our heads and go, well, that sounds really dumb. And yet we've all done it, right? We've all seen someone do it. We all watch TV and laugh at it going on because somewhere along the way that's been part of our life where instead of handling conflict appropriately and saying, look, this is how I feel, I'm injured, we all just lash at the other person and say, I'm here to hurt you. And the other person goes, I didn't know I was showing up for a fight. I should have brought some gloves or something. So the first thing that we would talk about is saying, hey, when you handle conflict, how about we attack our disagreements? How about we attack our disagreements and not each other? How about we attack our disagreements and not each other? Number 2, practice intentional communication and listening. Practice intentional communication and listening. Practice intentional communication and listening. I don't know if any of you guys have this problem. I checked with my wife about sharing this. I don't know if any of you have trouble with this, but did you know I actually get in trouble for stuff I don't even do? Yeah. So on occasion, my wife will have a dream where I've done this terrible thing to her. And sometimes I've just lied to her. Sometimes I wasn't where I was supposed to be. Sometimes I've actually cheated on her. And it's in a dream, mind you. And she wakes up angry at me. And won't talk to me till like lunch. And I'm sitting there the entire day going, what did I do? I don't remember doing anything. I don't remember being dumb. I don't remember. And she's just doing this the entire time till lunch. And I finally say, look, dear, I can't read your mind. Will you tell me what I did? I'm sure I'm sorry for it. Just tell me what I did. Well, in my dream last night, you did so. And I'm like, well, you're holding me accountable for stuff that happened in your dream? Again, I don't know if any of you struggle with stuff like that, but I get in trouble for stuff that I don't even do in my relationship. But it's a funny example of just how, you know what, we can live and we hold it in and we expect the other person to know, right? Maybe you've been in a relationship where like someone's mad at you and they're just really ticked at you, right? And you're sitting there and it's obvious they're mad because they've got their face on, their arms crossed, and they won't talk to you and they're treating you terribly. And you finally say, hey, what's wrong? And they say, well, if you don't know, that's even worse. I expect you to know what you did wrong. Now, here's why we do that. Because it feels good to be better than somebody else. And we get in a self-righteous mode where, well, you're just so dumb and I'm so much better than you. I'm going to keep it in and make you pay. I'm not even going to talk to you. I'm not even going to pay attention to you. And what's really going on is we're just shaking the bottle, getting ready to pop. And instead of telling that person before we sulked all day in our anger and shaking the bottle all day, now we're going to blow up in their face. Is it going to work out? And so the number one thing we should do is not assume the other person can read our minds. Lord have mercy, right? Now, it's really important at this moment is for some of you that are married or sitting beside someone, stop pointing. Okay? I see some of you doing it right now. You're like, hey, you listen. All right? Here's the point. Stop reading minds. Now, on the other side of that is some of us have stopped communicating what's going on because the other person never listens. Let me say that again. Some of us have stopped communicating the conflict issue, what's going on, because the other side has stopped listening. You've taught me, you've trained me that you never listen, therefore I'm never going to talk about it. And what happens to the relationship? We just get shaken up more. And one day it'll blow up. Whoever wants this after the service, you're welcome to take it. All right? So the question is, on the other side of communication is, are you really listening? You see, often when someone's explaining to us how they're hurt or the conflict issue, we're immediately thinking of the retort we have and why we're not wrong and why we're going to get back at this person and why they're so dumb. When Jesus says, look, are you really listening? Look, when someone comes and wants to tell you something's wrong, they should listen. And if they listen, you've won them over. Again, if we flip that around and we go on the other side, if we really listen, we'll create a win situation. Now, real quick, just let me poke the bear one more time. Can you do this online? Can you say to someone, this is how I feel. Do you hear what I'm saying in an appropriate way online? The answer is no. All right? It can't be done. I get emails all the time with someone trying to explain something, and I say, look, this subject's too important to handle online. All right? Can you really express to someone how you feel appropriately online in a way that they're going to receive it and go, I bet this person loves me and wants to have a conversation about this? Yeah. Right? No, it can't be done that way. You can't share your conflict online that will create resolutions in an appropriate way. It just can't be done. Now, some of us have tried to write letters and send emails, and again, now we've created an environment where I'm writing you a long piece of carrying wordsmith document, and that's different. All right, but I cannot paste the Facebook for everybody to see what's going on and why I'm angry and expect you to respond in a healthy way, can I? This is why in your cars we've actually said, hey, what if we never handled our anger or vented on Facebook or Twitter or on social media ever again? And we said, we're really going to engage and follow Jesus. Now, I have a few friends, and I'm pretty sure they'll never post anything ever again because that's all I see. But what if we decided to do life different? Here's a couple thoughts that are really important, just to wrap it up. When you communicate to someone, again, if they're really listening, all right, your tone of voice matters. Did you know that? Your tone of voice matters? Because you can say something to someone, and your tone of voice changes how it happens, and it makes it a completely different message. When Allie and I got married, we had a conflict issue, and that was that there were towels always on the floor. I would come home, and it looked like the entire football team had showed up and showered at our house and left their towels all over the floor. And I think to myself, well, who was this team that came by and used our shower? Because anybody in our house doesn't need this many towels, right? And so I would say to my wife, hey, why are the towels left on the floor? Now, here's the problem. One day I came home, and I was really upset and angry at something that happened at work. And I'm sure none of you have ever done this where you were angry over here and you took it out on the wrong person, right? And violated Jesus' laws of how to handle conflict. But I've done that. All right? And I came home and I said to her, why are all these towels on the floor? That conversation didn't go well from there. And I had to apologize several times for that. Now, I could have came in and said, hey, I love you. Why are all these towels on the floor? And I probably would have got an intelligent response, wouldn't I? She would have said, well, I invited the football team over to shower. But again, your tone of voice changes everything. I can invite someone into a conversation, or I can chew them out, saying the same very thing by how I change my tone of voice. Another communication tip is speaking I feel, I think statements, showing my perspective, not accusing someone. So I can say, you know, I feel like you don't care about the house and the work we do cleaning it up because you have all these towels on the floor. Not, you don't care about the house because all these towels are on the floor. You see, again, one of these I'm sharing how I feel and I invite you to engage me in a conversation, conflict resolution. The other one, I'm just pointing out the fact you're an idiot. And I'm smarter than you and better than you. And if you would just come over to my side, the dark side, we'd all get along. Another one is never use absolutes. So you're saying to your kids, you never take out the garbage. And your child responds to you, yes, I did. Remember October 4th? I took it out. We're not getting to the point of the conversation. Listen, son, in my perspective, I'm not seeing you take out the garbage. Is there a reason the garbage isn't getting out? And you may be surprised. Your child or your spouse or whoever you're engaging says, well, because this. And suddenly you go, hey, we need to change how life is done. Because I invited you into a conversation rather than chew you out using an absolute. You always do. Hey, you know what? In my perception, quite often this is happening. Are we seeing the same thing here? You see, again, I use an always, or in my perception, quite often this happens. Again, all I've done is say, hey, I'm going to semantics, but I've invited you into a conversation versus chew you out and tell you why you're so dumb and evil. Okay? Now, again, why is this important? Well, because this is not a healthy way to live. In fact, right now, some of you are thinking, hey, the person I'm sitting beside is that bottle. And at any moment, I'm afraid they're going to blow up. But who are we really shaking up every day? Not those around us, it's ourselves. So it's important for personal health, but it's also important because, again, the mission of the church is to move people closer to Jesus. Did you get another 2 points there? The mission of the church is to move people closer to Jesus. And Jesus, in fact, says this. He says, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you hate one another. And so a church that really hates one another and claws and scratches and calls each other names is always attracted to the outside world. And the outside world goes, good, I've wanted to know how to fight better. Jesus says something different. He says, look, when the world looks at my church, it should look and go, you know what, those people love each other. Now, notice he doesn't say you'll never disagree, because sometimes a healthy disagreement is, you know what, we're not going to see this eye to eye, and it's okay. It's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. I mean, you like blue, and I can't even see color, so I like this one, and I don't even know what it's called. That's okay. Again, Jesus doesn't say they'll always agree. He just says they'll know each other by their love. So, just a thought. What if in our marriages we said, you know what, we're going to take Jesus' words to heart, and we're going to begin to practice what he says on healthy conflict management. And again, you can go on and read the rest of the chapter, but we're just going to cover this one verse and this one thing. We're going to do it one-on-one, and we're going to sit down, and I'm going to listen. Holy cow, there are spouses right now going, if my partner listened to me, life would be different. And so what if we said, we're going to do it Jesus' way. I'm going to practice the art of really listening. And I'm going to drive home, and on the drive home, I'm going to say to you, dear, I heard Jesus speaking to me today in spite of Aaron was talking. And I just want you to know, I don't listen well. You've been saying it to me for years. This is just another example of why I don't listen well. And I just want you to know, I'm going to start to try. And I just want you to be patient with me, but I also want you to hold me accountable in loving ways, because I just don't listen well. And what if we as parents said to our kids, you know what, I know life's tough being a kid nowadays, and I know you've got all kinds of adventures and ways that make things happen that I never had, and I realize that I'm not always listening to you because I'm just so tired, and when you give me attitude, my brain shuts off, and I don't listen to what you're really saying when you give me attitude, and I just want you to know I'm going to try to listen to you. Just can you knock down the attitude 2 notches if you really have something you want to say to me? Whew. And then what if we said, you know what, we're going to, at work and at church, and we're actually going to go to the person. We're going to change how we do it. And I bet there would be people who suddenly, for some of us, they looked at our Facebook and tweets and said, how come you never tweet anything anymore? And you're going, because I'm trying to follow Jesus, and I can't think of anything positive to say. And I bet, wow, what a testimony that would be, wouldn't it? And suddenly they looked and said, hey, something happened to Susie. She's no longer crazy online and venting every 5 seconds, but she keeps posting these things about Jesus. How she's in a recovery for conflict program. Man, I bet that would just change everything. Everything. We would save marriages. We would save families. We would save organizations. We'd save everybody headaches and strife. And suddenly our children would grow up in a situation where they said, you know what, I know how to handle conflict because I watched mom and dad do it, and they did it so well that I can't even understand a world that doesn't know how to do it. Mom and dad, they didn't throw stuff at each other. They didn't call each other names when there was a problem. They just sat down and talked to each other. Hey, I know we're only dating. I know we're 16, but why can't we do that? You know what? If we can't do that, I don't have time to date you. Oh my goodness, sweet mercy. We're going to save heartbreak. Like, what if you only dated people who followed Jesus smart enough that they said, we're only going to handle conflict Jesus' way? Lord, have mercy. I hope my daughter's listening right now. Right? Right? So what if you had the courage today to take that piece of paper off your chair and say, if I'm going to follow Jesus, I don't get a vote. And if I'm going to follow Jesus, I got to change how I do conflict. And Jesus, I'm going to sign my name right now. I'm going to take it home. I'm going to put it on my refrigerator. I'm going to put it on the dashboard of my car. I'm going to put it wherever, because I have a lot of places I get angry. I'm going to put it there. And I know, Jesus, help me, because I'm not 100% like perfect. I'm not going to walk out of here cured on how I've lived in habits of handling conflict. But Jesus, I want to be an overcomer. I don't want to be that person beat down by conflict. I don't want to continue to shake my life and go, I'm living ready to blow up on someone and no one's going to like it. I'm going to do it different. I'm going to sign this piece of paper as a commitment and vow to you and me that through the power of the Holy Spirit, I can be an overcomer and handle conflict different. So the piece of paper on your chair is for you. I just hope you have the courage to do it. Oh, and by the way, if you want to follow Jesus, here's the good news. He's given you the power to overcome, and he's already taught you how. Here's the bad news. You don't get a vote. Just Jesus gave this as kind of an order. Here's how to handle conflict. Do it. Not, here's an idea. Let me pray for you. Our band's going to come up. We're going to get ready to take up an offering. But I'm serious. I'm praying because there are relationships right now. There are marriages right now going, man, if we did this, it would save us. And on the way home, you're going to have conversations. Honey, we're going to survive if we figured out how to do this. And then let me remind you that the healthy triangle is when you invite a counselor in, and we have a counselor on staff whose sole job is to work with families and work with relationships, trying to put them back together. And she is a wonderful counselor, and she's available to you. And let me remind you, by the grace of God, that none of us are perfect. Amen? That means you're not always right. And so you may need to be the one that learns to listen. Let me pray for us. Jesus, help. Help me be humble enough to first of all admit I'm not always right, even though I am. Jesus, help me to be strong enough to say my relationship with my wife and with my kids is more important than always being right. And Jesus, help me to be brave enough to say I'm going to make this change in my life because I love you. And I love the person on the other end of your desk where their picture sits as well. I need you, Jesus. How I need you. In the name of God the Father, who says, look, you don't have to be beat up every day by conflict. You can be an overcomer. And you go forth and live as overcomers, handling conflict Jesus' way. May you have the courage to fill out your card and put it somewhere that reminds you, I'm going to do my social media different because I'm going to do conflict Jesus' way. In the name of God the Father, you're blessed. Amen.